celebration turns into a massacre in Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, this time targeting a popular nightclub around 1:15 local time. Reyna is located on the banks of the Bosphorus in the trendy Ortaköy district. It was hosting hundreds of people for a New Year's celebration. At least one assailant, believed to have been dressed in a Santa Claus costume, randomly opened fire after shooting and killing the police officer at the door. Media say some guests jumped into the cold waters of the Bosphorus to escape. The confusion of those inside still visible after.
Relatives of inmates tried to storm the prison gates as they pleaded for word of their loved ones. Authorities said it took 18 hours for them to recover control of the facility outside the Amazon River city of Manaus. Inside, bodies of mutilated victims were piled up in a corridor. Some were reported decapitated.
Unfortunately, there were deaths. We had them outside the prison. They were thrown outside the prison by the criminals themselves. There were escapes. We don't know yet how many, but we are searching for the escapees.
More than 150 prisoners have escaped from a jail in the Philippines after it was stormed by gunmen. It happened in the south of the country. About 100 men attacked the building, killing a prison officer and freeing the men. A separatist rebel group is believed to be behind the attack.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks. Facing off with thousands of officers on site, many in riot gear, confronting them with flashbang grenades and pepper spray.
Everyone knows what that means, right? We've been talking about this for a long time. Thank you. Okay. Great thing for the American worker, what we just did.
Settlers protesting last week in Amona in the West Bank. Israel's High Court had ruled that Jewish families built their homes here on private Palestinian land. And after years of delay, police moved in to clear the site. Now the Israeli parliament has narrowly passed a highly controversial law to protect other outposts built without government permits. A victory for nationalists who stress biblical ties to the land.
Odin Sanchez was one of the last hostages the National Liberation Army, or ELN, was holding in the jungle. A former congressman who last year swapped places in captivity with his sick brother. The group is seeking peace, but the government said it wouldn't start talks until all the hostages the ELN was holding had been released. In a tweet, President Juan Manuel Santos urged the ELN to stop forever what he called the unjustifiable practice.
Radiation levels at one of Fukushima's nuclear power stations is at its highest level since the tsunami-triggered meltdown nearly 6 years ago. Tokyo Electric Power, or TEPCO, is reporting that atmospheric readings inside Daiichi's reactor number 2 are as high as 530 sieverts an hour. To put that in perspective for you, a human that is exposed to a single dose of 10 sieverts would die in a couple of weeks. The levels being recorded here are 53 times that. TEPCO says it's possible melted fuel has leaked through the pressure vessel. The discovery is going to seriously challenge the efforts to safely dismantle this plant.
I think the last administration appeased Iran far too much. I think they went too far with Iran, and I think as a result, Iran is far more activist than it otherwise would be.
Iran's response yesterday to, quote, being put on notice by Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, was to say that Iran does not have to pay any attention to, quote, useless talk coming out of the White House from an inexperienced person, to which the president tweeted back this morning that Iran is playing with fire.
A series of avalanches have killed more than 100 people in mountainous areas of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Many people are still believed to be trapped under the snow. An Afghan ministry spokesman says more than 200 homes have been either damaged or destroyed. The avalanches, which came after heavy snowfall, have also killed an estimated 550 animals.
It took Mercy and Leonardo Cardenas more than 30 years to build their family home. They lost everything in just minutes. They sold fish to earn a living and help feed their 4 children. That business has gone too.
I don't know how I am going to start all over again. I don't know where I will get the money. All I know is that this seems to be a life of hardship.
They are among the more than 15,000 residents who lost their homes in Tuesday night's fire. Firefighters say they had difficulty getting through the narrow alleyways. The fire raged on for 10 hours.
North Korea has fired an unidentified type of ballistic missile. That from South Korea's Yonhap news agency, which quotes the country's military. It comes after the US said last month that it had seen indications that Pyongyang could be preparing for a new test launch. And in his New Year's speech, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said his country was close to testing an intercontinental ballistic missile. If confirmed, this could be seen as a test of Donald Trump's administration.
These protesters, who are immigrants working in Washington, D.C., say this demonstration is meant to show their importance to society.
What do you want to say to Donald Trump? Come in the middle and tell us!
Channels Television earlier spoke with some of the protesters who called this event a day without immigrants, as they shut down their businesses, while some schools were even closed, as students came out to show solidarity.
Day Without Immigrants is to send a very loud message to the leadership of this country that if they are going to make decisions that affect all of us immigrants, that they have to think twice.
And the Borno State National Emergency Management Agency says 7 suicide bombers have been killed during an attempted attack along Maiduguri-Mafar Road in the state on Thursday night. According to NEMA, some of the suicide bombers found their way to a place where people gather with their trucks loaded with goods for onward movement. 7 members of the Civilian Joint Task Force sustained injuries and were taken to the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital for treatment.
Parts of South Sudan are facing the UN's first declared famine since 2011, with worrying signs of impending mass starvation.
People are already dying. And so we have done everything possible to try to keep things from getting to this. But without that access to some of the worst affected areas, there's really only so much humanitarian relief can do.
Kim Jong-nam, half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, killed at Kuala Lumpur airport in Malaysia, according to South Korean government sources. TV there reporting that he was poisoned by 2 women thought to be North Korean spies.
A mass grave containing the remains of babies and young children has been found in a former Catholic orphanage in Ireland. The finding supports a local historian's efforts to trace the fates of 800 children who died at the facility between 1925 and 1961.
It is the President's solemn duty to protect the American people. And with this order, President Trump is exercising his rightful authority to keep our people safe. As threats to our security continue to evolve and change, common sense dictates that we continually reevaluate and reassess the systems we rely upon to protect our country. While no system can be made completely infallible, the American people can have high confidence we are identifying ways to improve the vetting process and thus keep terrorists from entering our country.
The CIA has lost control of the majority of its hacking arsenal, which could fall into the wrong hands around the world. That's according to the latest revelation from WikiLeaks. Well, for more on this, we can now cross live to our correspondent in London, Polly Boyker. Polly, good to see you. Now, what implications might this report have?
Well, they're calling this leak Vault 7, and they're claiming that this is the largest ever leak of secret CIA files. According to WikiLeaks, the CIA has lost control of the majority of its cyber weapons.
Afghan commandos landed on the roof of Kabul's main military hospital as 4 ISIS gunmen were inside, some disguised as doctors, moving from ward to ward. I was in the operation room when a suicide bomber in a white doctor's uniform came in, said a doctor. I fell to the ground. Then he shot my colleague.
She wants to know if her child is alive or among those killed in a fire at a Guatemalan children's home.
It was lit. I don't know what it was, but mattresses were lit since last night. There are many children who have burns, 19 are dead. They haven't given us an explanation, and they don't let us go in.
Volunteer firefighters rushed to the state shelter to put the blaze out. They said it was caused by youngsters themselves who've been protesting against abuse. Police said
There's anger over the firing of 46 U.S. attorneys, a law enforcement source telling CNN, and I'm quoting now, this could not have been handled any worse, because there was little warning. Our Pamela Brown, our justice correspondent, reporting that some of these U.S. attorneys were simply told to clean out their desks the same day, effective midnight tonight. There are people, she's reporting, traveling on official business, and they were just told they were fired.
Pirates have hijacked an oil tanker off the coast of Somalia. The RS-13 had been carrying fuel from Djibouti to Mogadishu when it was reportedly approached by 2 skiffs on March 13th. 8 Sri Lankan crew members were believed to be aboard the vessel, but it's unclear why the ship was stopped near northern Somalia. The Guardian reports that a spokeswoman for the EU Naval Force confirmed that an incident occurred and an investigation is underway.
The tourists who'd come to see the Mother of Parliaments ended up running away from it. Their panic explained by the sound of gunshots. For hours, Parliament was placed in lockdown, emergency vehicles blocking all roads. An air ambulance arrived to collect casualties. The security services had told us there'd been many close calls before, but this was the day the terror threat arrived at Westminster and even entered its grounds.
I'm pleased to announce the official approval of the presidential permit for the Keystone XL pipeline.
Ahead of his healthcare defeat in Congress, President Trump gave his permission on Friday for Canadian company TransCanada to complete construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. The move overturns former President Barack Obama's decision to block the project. The near 2,000-kilometre pipeline will eventually carry tar sands oil from Canada to refineries on the US Gulf Coast in Texas. But despite President Trump's latest permit, the project, which has faced years of stiff opposition from environmental activists and Native American groups, is far from a foregone conclusion. Protesters have vowed legal challenges, and TransCanada still needs to get approval for the pipeline's route through the state of Nebraska.
Rescue teams have begun the desperate search for survivors after an avalanche hit a group of high school students and teachers climbing in central Japan. Up to 8 people are feared dead and 2 were in a critical condition, according to officials. It was not immediately clear how many of the victims were pupils. The avalanche happened near a ski slope in Nasu, 160 kilometers north of Tokyo, where 52 students and 11 teachers were climbing. A fire department official explained that avalanches occur once or twice a year at this spot, but nothing on this scale.
The breaking news, it is official. The UK's Brexit process has begun then. The EU President Donald Tusk received a letter signed by Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May, kick-starting what is to be a 2-year-long, hard-fought negotiation on the terms. May says she's hoping for an ambitious agreement.
A few minutes ago in Brussels, the United Kingdom's permanent representative to the EU handed a letter to the President of the European Council on my behalf, confirming the government's decision to invoke Article 50. The Article 50 process is now underway, and in accordance with the wishes of the British people, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union.
Yeah.